All right. Well, let's kick off. It is 6:30 on the coast, and I want to welcome everybody who's joining us from wherever you are. For those of us here in Vancouver, we just want to acknowledge the lands that we're on. We're meeting within the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. For others on the call, you might want to reflect on where you're calling in from and the traditional lands that you may be on. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're really excited to put on this event, Fostering Fabulous Workplaces. This is one of a couple BCODN online events that we're doing, not something that we had been doing in the past, but obviously given current circumstances, we wanted to try to bring you some events online, and we're all sort of adapting to that. I want to welcome a couple board members that are here. So I myself, I am on the BCODN board and programs, so events. We also have Katerina, who's on the line, who is waving, saying hello. She is a programs co-chair, also on events. Hi, Katerina. And we have our co-chair president, Charles, is on the line with us. Hello, Charles.
Hi, everyone.
And I think that's all that I see from our board on here tonight. So just wanted to welcome them. So if you want to flip the slide there, we will check out your beautiful slides. So it's tonight it's all about looking at approaches to improving psychological safety, performance, and your business bottom line.
I do hear some noises in the background. Can we mute the non-hosts?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, and we'll just keep on moving there. And I'd like to introduce you, Catherine. So we'll get to your slide. So Catherine North is passionate about advancing psychological health and safety in the workplace and enhancing human potential and performance. Catherine holds a master's degree in organization development and leadership through Fielding Graduate University and is an associate certified coach with International Coaching Federation. Her final master's paper, A Trauma-Informed and Recovery-Oriented Approach to Change, was inspired by her introduction to trauma-informed practice during her time as a collaborative coach with the BC Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative. Through her study of trauma-informed practice, Catherine learned about psychological safety antecedents to trust and leadership characteristics that promote trust and psychological safety. So welcome, Catherine, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. Well, hello, everybody. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here this evening, and just a couple of housekeeping items. We have muted everybody in order to avoid interruptions. Please use the chat. The chat is there, and we really encourage an active dialogue. We will not consider it rude for you to share a thought or ask a question or say hello to somebody that you recognize. Very much a part of this evening is about building community. And we will be monitoring the chat box so that we can respond to your questions and comments. And given the number of participants on the webinar this evening, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to address everybody's concerns in real time, but we absolutely will follow up with a copy of the slides, copy of the chat, written responses to questions, and provide direct links to publicly available resources. I would also like to acknowledge we have Dr. Joti Samra with us in her capacity as a researcher and expert on psychological health and safety. And I will formally introduce Dr. Samra a little bit later on in the program. So to start us off, I'd like you to make a little note in the chat to introduce yourself and note where you're joining from today. I think some of us have done that in changed our names in our under our images, but if you're able to, just let us know where you're calling from today in the chat. So we have Coquitlam and Burnaby, Vancouver, Richmond, lots of BC folks, and we do know we have some folks from Ontario joining with us today. Calgary, wonderful. Prince George, this is great. Thank you so much. So my next question is, what brings you this evening? Is it a personal interest in psychological health and safety? Is it your professional role or responsibility? Feel free to make another note in the chat. So we see personal and professional, both, personal interest. Okay, so a lot of people are both interested in from a personal perspective and a professional perspective, and also interested in some of the tools. Wonderful, thank you. And global, fantastic. So I did not set up a poll, but more of a question just so that we can float a sense of who's familiar and to what extent. How familiar are you with the national standard for psychological health and safety? And feel free to just make a quick note, not at all, A, B, C, or D. So we have some folks, some have heard of it, don't know very much about it. Others are very familiar with it. And I'm curious, it doesn't look like anybody has actually implemented. So we do have someone who's actually implemented it. So that's great. Some folks didn't even know there was a standard. So we've got folks representing a whole range of awareness of the standard tonight. And my intention for this evening was really to create a bit of a baseline, just to even let you know that there are resources and that there are a number of them. And then hopefully if there is a continued interest, we can have another session to dive a little bit more deeply into the details of what is available. So, fostering fabulous workplaces. I absolutely love witnessing and experiencing the personal and organizational growth and transformation that comes when we're all invited and encouraged to be bold, truthful, courageous, and vulnerable. And there are so many factors that go into creating fabulous workplaces. And these factors contribute to how much we're able to show up as our bold, truthful, courageous, and vulnerable selves. And I have two brief stories to share with you this evening. One is of a psychologically unhealthy workplace, and the other is one of a psychologically unsafe workplace. The first experience was about 10 years ago, and I returned from a maternity leave to a workplace that was in an absolute state of upheaval. While I had been away on my mat leave, the organization had experienced a partial dissolution and restructuring, a very sudden departure of the CEO. The workplace was absolutely reeling from what felt like two organizational massive earthquakes. The culture I left was one of a family-like atmosphere that I remember as being open and transparent. And the workplace felt light and uplifting and inspiring, and a place where I felt my input was valued. When I came back from my mat leave, the culture I returned to was heavy with secrecy and confidentiality as a result of some litigation that was going on at the time. And my old position had evaporated with the restructuring. A new role had been created for me in connection with a new initiative that was under development. I no longer reported to the manager with whom I had had a long and trusting relationship, and instead I was reporting to somebody who was fairly new to the organization. On top of this, an office move was being planned to a new location across town, and add into that my own personal state, postpartum depression and anxiety, sleep deprivation, strained personal relationships, personal financial crisis, job dissatisfaction, and a tenuous relationship with my new direct supervisor. In this whole experience, I didn't experience harassment, and there was no threat to my physical safety. The staff treated each other with civility and respect, and I had some long-standing trust-based relationships with colleagues in whom I could confide and share my personal concerns. And yet, I was experiencing what felt like an extremely psychologically unhealthy workplace experience. Contrast this experience with another workplace where I was a new employee. My onboarding experience was abysmal. Policies and procedures were absent. The organizational structure and people's roles and responsibilities were unclear. Leadership were conflicted over organizational practices and priorities, and team members didn't trust each other. And leadership behaviors included speaking poorly of their direct reports to other direct reports, dressing staff down in front of others, dominating discussions and interrupting and making accusations and assumptions. And this experience was like a game of survivor. People formed alliances, and yet they were never sure whether the alliance they formed could truly be trusted. And it was a culture of me versus them. And this workplace culture felt psychologically unsafe. I invite you to think about your own personal experiences and to think about what helps you show up as your bold, truthful, courageous, and vulnerable self. Does it look something like this? I absolutely love this image. And I'm curious if you recognize these characters. The upper one is Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, and the lower image are the cast of characters from the movie Inside Out. And we have joy driving with sadness and anger and disgust and fear. And I invite you to think about what these images represent for you. And feel free to capture in the chat if you'd like to. For me, Buzz Lightyear represents performance and potential and infinite possibility. And I can hear him saying, "To infinity and beyond." And the bottom image for me represents being all in. I am owning whatever is going on, and I am showing up.
Oh, Jim.
And by far, I have to say, the most amazing workplace experiences I have ever been a part of were with the BC Child and Youth Mental Health and Substance Use Collaborative from 2015 to 2017. And this experience for me was where we truly honored and appreciated the people who showed up. And when I think of psychological health and safety in the workplace, I think of the youth and the parents and the educators and counselors, physicians and nurses, social workers, community leaders, health administrators, and government representatives who agreed to focus on how we all wanted to be together so that we could each show up and make a collective positive impact. And it's by attending to this how that I witnessed over time a collective increase in confidence and self-assurance, in a greater sense of belonging and acceptance and appreciation for learned and lived experience, and a magnified capacity to manage uncertainty and disruption. And so many of the individuals and teams realized their individual and collective potential for peak performance. And this is the journey that brings me here today. It's not the difficult experiences that inspire me. It is the amazing ones. And so drawing on my own personal experience, I've learned that peak potential can look like collaboration and learning, and it can feel like love through caring, connected relationships. So whatever your journey is that brings you to this space, let's take a moment to honor and celebrate the path we're all choosing together this evening. We are here in this space together, raising our awareness of psychological health and safety and peak performance and how these affect the bottom line. So let's give each other a big high five and a virtual hug. Yeah, good job. Yay, exactly. I'm so glad to have you guys here this evening. So the objectives for this webinar are twofold. First, the objective is to create an opportunity for discussion and to acknowledge the OD community's contribution to psychological health and safety in the workplace. And second, to introduce you to a suite of online evidence-based tools and resources that you can use with clients and your organization to improve organizational concerns, such as employee engagement, improvement in retention and recruitment, and also to help reduce costs associated with the burnout, sickness, and stress. So our goals this evening are to explore factors that foster fabulous workplaces and to review the 13 factors of psychological safety based on the National Standard of Canada for psychological health and safety in the workplace. We'll learn about publicly available evidence-based tools and resources. And we'll have an opportunity to reflect on how your practice affects and is affected by psychological health and safety, and what you can do to contribute to this in your own workplace. So in the chat, I'm curious, what does a fabulous workplace mean to you? What comes up to mind for you? Everybody feels engaged, humor, acceptance, inclusion, fun, trust, energy, safety, fairness, fulfillment, fulfilling mission, supportive leaders, a good paycheck, absolutely. The ability to create alliances, be transparent, growth, trust. Absolutely. These are the factors this is what a fabulous workplace can feel like. This is a slide that I found. It's a screenshot from a YouTube video that was prepared by Professor Derek Mowbray. And for Professor Mowbray, it illustrates what he describes as the spin-offs of a fabulous place to work. And I just want to acknowledge how so many of these things echo what came up in your comments in terms of increased trust and kinship or friendship or a sense of motivation or fun. All of these things contribute together to help create an experience of peak personal and peak corporate performance. There we go. So what factors contribute to this fabulous workplace? I'm curious, again, feel free to enter into the chat. How do we get there? Interaction, trusting relationships, communication, values alignment, listening, empathy, transparency, clear goals, leading by example, no competition. Yeah, some really great insights here. This brings me to the 13 factors of psychological health and safety. The National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace identifies 13 factors of psychological health and safety, and I'll read these out to you. They include psychological support, organizational culture, clear leadership and expectations, civility and respect, psychological competencies and requirements, growth and development, recognition and reward, involvement and influence, workload management. Oop, I lost my screen. Workload management, engagement, balance, psychological protection, and protection of physical safety. And I'm curious, what are you noticing in your workplace during this time? And what do you think are the greatest needs, and which factors, when you look at this list, which factors resonate with these needs? And again, I invite you to make a comment in the chat. And I've just lost my view of the chat. So if somebody else maybe could read out some of what's coming up for me, that would be really helpful.
Sure, I can
Thank
read
you.
that. So we had a little dialogue from Dawn in regards to wondering if some of the values will change in the workplace, especially now that we've got maybe more work-life balance. Interesting that Twitter just announced that everyone can work from home forever. That's interesting. Maybe that will be more common. So we had, let's see, Therese says tax on resilience and coping strategies, that we need increased psychological protection. Number 13, so protection of physical safety. Sydney says greatest needs, civility and respect, psychological protection and balance. We've got, let's see here, Carrie says in-person connection. Yes, we all miss that. Elaine says psychological support needed due to COVID. And Michelle says all of these particularly heightened in the current situation. Shelley just says, wow. Judy says, I think it depends where your organization was pre-COVID. So this might affect what your organization is doing now. And Ainsley, I totally agree with you. We're doing a lot of screen time. What can we do to find more balance?